This is God of War. We're here on the PC taking a look at this port of the most recent entry in the God of War series that kind of soft reboots things, basically gives Kratos a fresh start. Time has passed. His past adventures did happen, but now he's in a brand new chapter of his life, that being fatherhood and also being kind of older and tired. So anyways, the game has finally arrived on PC. I've played it basically, on the PS4. I played through it. I checked it out on the PS5 when it got an update and an upgrade. And now we are here taking a look at the PC version of the game. So this is largely focused on the technical perspective of things at the beginning of the video. You can jump to like a sort of more in-depth review of the actual, narrative and the gameplay a little bit later on in the video. But I wanted to focus, since this is, it's showing on PC, to talk about how it runs and everything like that. So we're going to be showing off kind of the graphic options, the things you can do to change the experience up. And I think that's going to be very interesting and quite a lot of fun to dive into. And this is the latest of the PlayStation ports to arrive, on PC. We've seen Horizon Zero Dawn, which I didn't check out, but then there was Days Gone. I got to check that one out. That was pretty neat. That one was actually a very good option in regards to lots of settings and fine-tunings that you could do. It's actually kind of an impressive PC port. And then this one is also fairly decent. It offers a number of different choices and elements that you can change, and I thought that was really quite intriguing. And this is just an opening sort of little video thing just to give you some context and to show you a bit of the game in action. So here we go. These are the graphics options that are present. So we're going to kind of be doing a little bit of a sped up video just to quickly show kind of a little bit of how much things change. So we've got all these different preset options, and then we got things like there's minimum, and then it goes to original. So I'm assuming the original is kind of PlayStation-esque visual options and stuff like that. So there are a lot of different things you can sort of adjust, like the model quality, the anisotropic filtering, the environments, the reflections. So you can actually kind of max those all the way up to ultra and stuff like that, or you could just play on the original. For a lot of the video later on, you're going to see things at the original setting with a bit of a DLSS kind of impacted into the game. We'll be talking about those settings in a sec too, but this really is just kind of a quick thing being hey, for the reasoning of time and trying to keep people interested in what's going on, just kind of quick changes back and forth. It doesn't really impact things a whole lot unless you're going from minimum all the way to ultra. Kind of the intermediate steps kind of slowly increase things, but I think even at the lower settings, this is still something that looks pretty good, and I would imagine is actually quite a demanding experience. So for context, I'm on the RTX 2080 Ti paired with an i9 9900K, so that's my current setup. I am looking at, hopefully doing a big upgrade this year. That would be quite cool. But, it's still a pretty good power pairing. And we're sort of rendering this out at, 4K and stuff like that. We're trying to show off ultra at this setting. But we are going to go over a lot of the different visual options and settings that are present within this game just in the next segment here. But this is purely just to be hey, here's some quick changes back and forth, sort of how the visuals change in this area where there's a dynamic fire going on. And you might notice that I have kind of some performance hiccups here or there, and that's due to the nature of playing and recording off the same unit. It's very, very demanding. And on top of that, also just, kind of playing at ultra presets and stuff are going to be a little bit more demanding than kind of just, trying to play at an optimized setting. Because the whole point of what I'm trying to do with this tech stuff here is to actually take a look at it, see how it's performing with these different options, and then kind of just diving in and discussing it. So this game is absolutely incredible. We're not diving into our review yet, but I just want to say, that this game is, from a story standpoint, gameplay standpoint, it is absolutely incredible, perfect experience. And it is a little bit neat on this one, kind of how it runs. So the next segment that we're going to be kind of going into it, and this should be mostly spoiler free, it's a bunch of little random story bits and then some combative sequences here or there that kind of just show off a little bit of the battling, and they kind of look cool later on in the video, just quick clips. But here we're going to be diving into a more in-depth look into kind of all of the display settings. So firstly is aspect ratio stuff, we got that. And VSync, FPS limiting, so you can have no FPS limit, you can have 120, 60, 30, 70, you can do all the little increments of 10 FPS. Motion blur settings, there's HDR options if you want, and then you can see resolution scaling at the bottom. We'll show off the resolution scaling a little bit later on, and then you got those extra little NVidia reflex and stuff you can turn to. Here is the photo mode. It's actually kind of in depth. If you go into more of a free, because this is more of a sequence area, you're actually, because it'll say restricted camera, But if you go to like a more open area where you're kind of free moving around, you can fully move around your character. It's quite in depth. And just something I wanted to quickly highlight. So now we're going to take a look at the DLSS and the Fidelity FX Super Resolution. So these are the options you get to choose. You know, you can go up like ultra quality, go for more performance. Then there's a render scaling. Note how that changes the render resolution of the game. So you can see just, again, this part is going to be adjusting the visuals, just seeing, you know, quickly showing how the world is. So there was a really like bit of a strange thing here. So whenever I would run the game at 60 FPS lock or less on like any setting at all, like I could go down to 1080, I could go all the way up to 4K, I kept getting screen tearing. Now obviously, you know, the VSync and stuff like that, it perfectly smooths it out. But if I was to do like basically any resolution at like say an uncapped frame rate, it ran perfectly smooth with no screen tearing. Or if I put 120 FPS as my cap, I got no screen tearing at all. So I don't know if that has to do a little bit with my like monitor and stuff. Like the reason I'm looking up and down is kind of like seeing the I guess you would say you know, the wavy lines of like, you know, screen tearing and stuff. I was just like, what is going on with that? So I don't know if that's something else someone is going to notice, but you know, turning on VSync, you can really notice a difference. At least for me, when I was playing, I was like, you turn down like ultra performance with like DLSS, you turn that up all the way to ultra performance as opposed to like quality preset, and you are getting like some smooth, like really fluid gameplay. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I kind of like the quality option. You know, kind of doing 60 seemed to be a really good one with the VSync on. And I just, again, like I'm trying to play around with things, see different visual settings, give you context into some of the visual things that are going on here. And just, you know, kind of be like, okay, so this is how this game is looking, you know, with this option. This is how it's looking with this option. So I, you know, kind of am someone that really does lean into NVIDIA's DLSS. I think that's kind of the way to go. It's the most matured of the AI sort of improvement systems. The game does seem to actually run quite well if you are just playing it, you know, kind of the 4K original settings. I seem to have a decently fine experience, you know, with the VSync on and everything like that. It was totally fine. I did play a lot of it with the DLSS on quality mode though, and I was pretty happy with it. You know, kind of having an uncapped frame rate and everything like that. It felt smooth. It felt gameplay wise pretty good. I do wish there was, and I didn't see it in this, like a bit of a frame rate kind of like checker. I guess I could have gotten like an overlay or something for it, but I'm not that quite set up for PC at this current point in time. You know, still doing the odd PC video here or there. You know, just trying to talk about these things and showcase them from the odd occasion when I get like a specific game on PC that I want to showcase, like, you know, God of War here. And I did have quite a lot of time to play with it. I didn't necessarily dive in fully. You know, I have played this whole game already on, you know, basically the PlayStation 4 when it was like releasing. I covered it then, and then, you know, diving a little bit into it again for the PS5 side. So, you know, played a number of hours here, just try to get a feel for it. Mostly, once again, take a look at these technical elements and kind of be like, here's what the graphics look like in this case, here's how they look like in this case, you know, showing the settings between every time just so you could see exactly what I'm changing, what I'm playing around with. Oh, and here are just kind of the options you can kind of tweak quickly. So you change like the HUD mode and everything like that, camera options, you know, kind of the movement assist, audio choices. You can even do like a headphones mode, which is kind of cool. Once again, display, which we already kind of looked at, the advanced settings. So it would have been nice to maybe have a little bit more specific freedom in some of like the resolution adjustments or, you know, some of the smaller like graphical things. But I think this was kind of like, you know, we've got this version on, oh, and here's just a deeper quick look at some of the DLSS application and then the Fidelity FX application too. I do think the Fidelity one actually looks pretty good from AMD there, but I do again feel that and support that the DLSS is kind of the way to go if you are looking for, you know, an AI upscaling technology that still looks really good and gives you those performance, like, you know, helps you get those frames. So that's something I would suggest looking at. So I kind of feel like they took just, you know, the PlayStation version and then they just sort of like increased the scale of it in regards to some of the things you can make, as opposed to like fully optimizing it necessarily for PC. Like, it's a good experience. It is. It runs quite well with everything like that. I didn't notice anything too detrimental. It was just, again, that very weird thing where it's like, you know, choosing 120 or choosing, you know, uncapped as opposed to 30 capped or 60 capped. It was weird that those options were giving me tearing, which again, you know, kind of a monitor type thing could be in play too there. I just haven't necessarily experienced that personally on like other titles that I've been playing, but it's just something to mention. So there we go. We kind of showcase the technical stuff. Let's dive into what God of War is. So for some people, this might be your first God of War experience. I mean, we haven't had, you know, like a God of War title properly ported over to PC. You know, there's probably other means in which you could, you know, technically play the other ones. But this is like the first God of War PlayStation showcase. Like, this is one of the biggest PlayStation brands out there. Like, God of War is huge. Kratos is so well known. You know, been on like so many of the PlayStation consoles with so many games. But this is very much a sort of refresh, a fresh start for this character. It builds upon the lore of what came before, but it does something new with it. It really does completely take that concept, you know, because it'll feel similar to the previous games, but they've really sort of PlayStationized it in regards to their modern, sort of heavy, mature, third-person sort of like visual style. Like, they definitely have a specific look for this brand, which is neat. But this game looks kind of stunning, and it's not only the visuals that look really, really good for this game. It's also got a really emotionally charged and very well done story. It's about Kratos trying to like connect with his kid that he doesn't quite get, he doesn't quite understand, he doesn't know how to be a father, he doesn't know how to really react. And you get all these moments, like very subtle moments, where it's kind of like you could see Kratos trying to reach out in almost an emotional way, but he doesn't have quite the understanding or the capacity to do so. And it's so funny, it's always like, boy, and everything like that, and it was like he can't read anything anywhere, and it's kind of humorous. The two of them play off each other really, really well. I quite like it, because Kratos is trying to teach the responsibility of, like, you know, how you're supposed to become a strong warrior, how you're supposed to fight, you know, the patience, not letting your anger control you and stuff. And it's this kid, you know, a young kid that's dealing with all these problems, and Kratos is trying to iron the kid out, kind of be like, you know, you can't let these problems guide you. You need to have focus, otherwise you're gonna have problems with these enemies. And it's really quite interesting, because it's a journey to essentially, you know, they want to spread the ashes of like Kratos' love there, and that's kind of the whole kickstart of the journey. It's not spoilerish. It's literally just how things start. You know, you have this emotional journey you need to go on. You need to reach the top of the mountain, and Kratos doesn't really care about anything else going on in this like Norse-esque world. He just wants to, you know, pay his respects and whatnot and do what was asked. And it's just kind of, it's really neat, because you go on this really long, like, it is a chunky, lengthy story. Like, you could play this for, you know, tens of hours just doing, like, the main stuff. And then, like, it's not an open world game. There are some freedom points where you can kind of go out and you could do, like, there's some, like, boating stuff and, like, little side islands you can visit. And there's some, like, collectibles things you can do. But it's very much largely a linear sort of experience as you go through area to area, kind of fighting monsters, doing the occasional big boss fight, dealing with all these, like, really intense fantasy elements that are specific to this, like, region. Because, you know, Kratos is kind of an out of, you know, he's out of his realm kind of situation. And they tease a lot more of what's to come. It's neat because it feels like a completely full game, but it's also something that's completely standalone. Like, it has its own story arc that kind of gets solved, and it feels like just the beginning of a really larger story. And I can't wait for them to continue that with, you know, the next follow-up that should be arriving at some point in the near future here. Depending on the time of watching, you know, you're probably going to be like, oh, that one, or you'll be like, oh, cool. And yeah, it seems like they're almost using this PC thing as a primer to kind of get people to be like, oh, you want to get the next one, you know, either wait or jump onto PlayStation 5 to enjoy it now. And I think that's kind of probably the perspective they're going with, right? So this is really quite well done. You know, you get to explore this world. It's got RPG type mechanics in regards to getting sword, like, you know, you kind of go into the world, you explore a little bit, you level up, you get these different rune things, you kind of improve Kratos. It's not the focus of what the game is, but it is something that's like a little bit of an extra that adds to the ambience and the style of the play. You're doing some light puzzle solving occasionally. There's more, you'll find more puzzle-esque things the more you kind of do side stuff, as opposed to what's in your primary, like, ways you're going about doing stuff. But it's mostly, you know, kind of doing a bit of a hack and slash thing with a much more intense, mature story. And once again, it's a very, like, very emotionally driven one. You know, Kratos is obviously dealing with problems that he's not equipped to deal with. This guy, he destroys things, right? That's kind of what he does. And then you've got, like, this kid that is sort of coming into it, doesn't really understand things, has a hard time killing stuff, doesn't want to, wasn't really born into war like Kratos was. And it just neat seeing them kind of like connect across these fantastical environments. Oh, there is like some gorgeous like places. Like here, we're fighting these things, but the trees, the snow is really quite stunning. And then there's like this one place that I just absolutely love when I play this game. It's like I want to call it like a witch's hut because I don't want to give away anything, but it's like just got such beautiful, colorful leaves on the trees, and just the ambience and stuff. And I think in general, like the flora and the rocks and the texturing of this game look absolutely fantastic. So I imagine this might be a bit demanding for some, just because it doesn't necessarily have like a whole ton of like smaller scale type tweaked settings, but this is a great game. It really, really is. Like I gave it like a perfect score the first time around. I think it is absolutely just fantastic. It's a great balance of like this intense combat that you would expect, but also this more maturing perspective of like fatherhood in this scenario, of being like, the father that has a really hard time, even though he wants to try to connect with the kid, that he just like really struggles to. A lot of it's the struggle, and the kid doesn't even necessarily understand that, but it's like you see that more and more as the story goes on. The Kratos is like doing these things that the kid can't see, where he's like going to put his arm around the kid, or and he just kind of like holds back because that's not what he does, right? He's this god of war, right? So it's very fascinating from that perspective, and I'm very much looking forward to them kind of diving into that in a follow-up, just in regards to seeing the maturing of the kid in regards to the two of them kind of going on these quests and age and everything like that. It's very neat. Very great voice acting, crazy sort of foes within this area you have to battle. They nail the high fantasy elements of this experience so well. It feels great, the combat. You get this incredibly great like axe that just kicks axe. Yeah, there you go. You didn't see that coming, did you? But it is a seriously powerful type of weapon, and the environment is really reactive to that, so you can like just smash things like small items, and it's just this really cool throwing your axe, kind of having it rip out of an enemy. They kind of splurt like these orangey stuff out of them, but then it hits like, say, like a wagon or something, and the wagon like explodes and it splinters, and maybe even Kratos like picking up rocks and smashing things, and it's just a very, very well done game from like the technical standpoints to the story standpoints. And there are some little things I would have liked a little bit more depth in regards to some of the PC settings on this one, but I think they do offer a good amount of PC options. I think this does, from my experience, perform quite well. And I do want to mention, in case you are wondering, like, the VSync thing I was mentioning earlier, this was a situation whether I was recording or whether I had all my recording stuff turned off, because I was playing this, outside of the scenario of just recording. Like, I was actually, like, playing a bit of this, and then there were some bits I was putting on to record in and everything like that. So I tried to find a decent balance in regards to, taking a look at this one. And I played it with the Xbox controller, which felt fantastic, I gotta say. Because my first run through this was, like, the PlayStation 4 DualSense, or not DualSense, DualShock or whatever. That really wasn't that comfortable to use, in my opinion, but yeah, playing this with the Xbox controller was fantastic. A little bit of mouse and keyboard control too, right? PC players have got to be doing that. But yeah, no, it was just really neat that like PC is cool because it offers you so many easier freedoms in regards to how you want to input with the game. So if you want to throw other controllers on there, this one obviously can do that. And I thought that was really cool. But yeah, this is a great experience. If you have yet to experience the magic and the style of this absolutely incredible experience, this is a great game. It's a fantastic single player game that is chunky. There's lots of side stuff to do if you want to do it, but it is very much linear and kind of focused in trying to provide you with this great story of these two characters dealing with this really messed up world that they find themselves. One of them having grown up, one of them having found as this new home, trying to like just make it work. And I think it's just an absolutely fantastic game, a stellar experience. And you're actually really missing out if you haven't played this. It really is like such a phenomenal upgrade over even the existing God of War titles. If you've played those and you're kind of like, I don't know if I want to get into this, you move to PC or something like that, this is really a must-play experience. It just is absolutely fantastic. And I didn't personally have anything that was like too technically like kind of annoying or anything like that. It did seem to run fine on my system and my setup, so I was happy with the experience. and I was happy with what this provided. Just keep in mind that it might be a little demanding, but great game.